What's up, all my soldiers? This is CGT Podcast episode. It's been a while, so I don't really know what episode it is. And today we are going to be talking about opioids. Yay! Everybody love the opiates. And we got two epidemics going on at the same time, suppose. We got the colonialis epidemic, and then we got this opioid epidemic going on right now too. So there's gonna be some deep subjects right here because a lot of people are that we know are dealing with this, or maybe even somebody watching this is dealing with this themselves, which is the opioid crisis. Now I got notes over here that I've been taking. I got the slide, the videos and slides and different stuff to share with people. So today I'm about to be on my I'm about to be on my L type stuff. I'm on Instagram Live. I got Bigo Live up, and I got my Zoom running. And with that being said, I'm L today off of Death Note. That's me. Let me sit like L. Let me get in my L position. Y'all think I'm fucking playing right now? I'm not. Light my blunt back up. I'm L. I'm coming for you, light. I'm coming for you, light. Don't be running, nigga. I got this shit ready. Let's go. So today we talking about the opioid crisis. What they're calling today is what the opioid crisis. Let me go ahead and share my screen right quick. Okay, we got that popped up right quick. So today we talking about the opioid crisis. And the first thing I wanted to show everybody was these relevant news stories that are going on right now. Now, if you type in opioid lawsuit right now, you will probably get more results than you would get for COVID. Honestly, if you type in opioid lawsuit on Google or DuckDuckGo or anywhere like that, you will get a bunch of fucking results. And you got results from state after state. You got results from Thompson County receives 1.75 million from opioid lawsuit. You got McKenzie sued for alleged role in U.S.-Canada opioid issue. The Sackler family somehow won immunity from opioid lawsuits in the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy. Now, the reason I'm reading all these articles is not only because I'm L off a Death Note, but it's gonna lead to something way more significant. So stay here with me. What we talking about today is the opioid crisis, simply because of the fact that I had started watching this show called Dope Sick. Now, if you haven't seen Dope Sick, or if you haven't started watching it yet, please go check it out. I don't know what platform it's on. I think it's on Hulu, if I'm not mistaken. It's on Hulu. Where my candy at? I'm L off of Death Note. Stop playing with me. I need some candy right now. Okay. So, Dope Sick is a show that is going specifically into the Sackler family and the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy, or I mean not bankruptcy. That's what they got on that article, so that's why I just read it. But they're on the Dope Sick show. They're actually talking about the opioid crisis, basically, but they're focusing on the Purdue Pharma family. Now, the crazy thing is, you know, a lot of people don't even a lot of people who might watch that show won't even realize that the opioid epidemic was something that happened during the Civil War, right? And so we have history to go back to so that we can understand how opioids evolved, or really they just changed a couple of the way it looks, basically, how it evolved over time to be where it is today, where we can actually say we're still having an opioid crisis. So this is how we're gonna do this. First of all, we're gonna go. What my okay? There you go. First of all, what we're about to do is we're gonna do this. First, a lot of people don't even know what opioids are. So I'm gonna break down what an opioid is. And Instagram, you better not start tripping, bro. You're the only person who be tripping on here. Be go live, you're good. So first, we're gonna go into what are opioids, right? Opioids are a class of drugs naturally found in the opium poppy plant and that work in the brain to produce a variety of effects, including the relief of pain with pain, including the relief of pain with many of these drugs. Many prescription opioids are used to block pain signals between the brain and the body, and are typically prescribed to treat moderate to severe pain. In addition to controlling pain, opioids can make some people feel relaxed, happy, or high, and can be addictive. Additionally, side effects can include slowed breathing, constipation, nausea, confusion, and drowsiness. Now that sounds like a crackhead to me already. I don't know about y'all. Let me go on. So the reason I got this page right here, hopkinsmedicine.org, y'all know I study biochemistry and shit, so I already be on this website. And it just so happened that when I started watching the show Dope Sick on Hulu, and it got me interested to do this podcast, that this page was on my fucking laptop. So I just typed in, opioids on there, and this is what they showed me. Now, the reason why I'm showing this is because a lot of people think that opioids is they just relate it, like the people that I know at least, they relate opioids simply to stuff like the poppy plant alone. They don't know how many different types of fucking medicines and how many different names there are for what we commonly just throw into one group called opioids, right? So the reason why they call it the opioid crisis is because most of these opioids are based off of plant stuff, mostly poppy. So they don't want to confuse everybody by calling all these different drugs that people have proven to be addicted to be overdosing on, to be fucking causing depression, suicide, all this stuff, right? They don't want to go into name. So I had to do this little small detailed research. And a lot of people, are so sleep that they probably taking these fucking drugs right now and they don't even know it. So let's go. Opioids by name. Opioids are sometimes referred to as narcotics. Although they do relieve pain, they do not fall into the same category as over-the-counter painkillers, such as aspirin and Tylenol. And we already know why. We know why, because it has the fucking opioids in it. The most commonly used opioids are prescription opioids such as oxycodone, vicodin. Now, bruh, I know so many people who have been prescribed vicodin over time. It's crazy. Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid, 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, right? It's a synthetic opioid. So they've been in the laboratory tweaking the original opioids because people are addicted and I had so many fucking messed up side effects that eventually they was like, we got to make a synthetic version of it so we can try to control these side effects. But they ended up eventually that lane of them trying to do that ended up with them making a synthetic version of it that's more potent and still has the same side effects. So in their eyes, it's worth it. That's why they got fentanyl out there today. And heroin, an illegal drug. Heroin, an illegal drug, is an opiate based off of opioid, right? Okay. Now they talking about using opioids. I'm pretty sure they're gonna talk about the risk right there. We're gonna go down to the common drug names and brand names of opioids, right? Because we gonna end up going a little bit deeper on the use of it as we continue this video or this podcast, I mean. And yeah. So common drug names and brand names of opioids. Common drug names and brand names for opioids. So first we got oxycodone. Now, when a person hears the word oxycodone, if you're not familiar with the prescription drug culture, you know that they have put out there through music and they put it out there through music and sports entertainers. I made a very key note of that because when I was doing the research on this, a lot of the research that I found about people who are a part of the process of making people trust opioids more after the original opioid epidemic, there were musicians such as, you know, early rock and roll. They were all on fucking drugs, heroin and all. They were all on deep heavy drugs. A lot of the George Clinton funkadelic stuff, they were all on deep heavy opioids. Over time, they made these opioids, which you probably had to stick in your veins or do crazy shit like heat it up on a spoon back in the day. They changed it over time to make it more suitable through you just putting it in your body through a pill. So that's why we got the culture today of them advertising it to people via rap music, still rock music, and a lot of fucking music and entertainment overall is based off of people being addicts. So when when we talk about this, you'll hear a list of these drugs in people's music, or you'll have songs based off of how these drugs make people feel. A lot of sports entertainers are a part of this culture too, simply because of the fact that they get injured a lot. So in order for them to stay superstars and they want to be the stars in the sky, they want to be seen as gods on earth, you know. In order for them to do that, they got to be consistent in their craft of dunking on people and tackling people and stuff like that. So they have to continuously take these fucking opioids. As long as they're administered by quote unquote doctors or prescribed by quote unquote doctors and a quote unquote FDA approves it, then they can do it. But if you do it at home by yourself, it will be considered illegal. Catch me on that. Now, also, before I go on with the names of these drugs, and I'm letting oxycodone sit right there for a while for a reason, but before I go on, there's also a guy going around talk he's a professor or something like that. I forgot what college he's at, but he's literally a professor going around basically advocating for the full legalization of all these opioids. And a lot of people I seen on the internet are actually supporting this for some reason. And I couldn't help but see through it and just see it as another ploy. He probably works for Big Pharma. He probably getting paid off by Big Pharma. He probably getting paid off by the Sackler family. You telling me you're a professional professor at a college type shit, and that you know you do drugs every day, and then you're trying to make it you're still able to perform your daily tasks, what they call a functional addict. Shit, technically, I'm a functional addict. If you want to consider weed a drug, is not opioid, but it definitely is a cannabinoid. Two completely different things. Don't get it confused. Um, Both actually have receptors in your body and shit, but come on, bro. You can't compare a fucking opioid to a cannabinoid. Anyway, with that being said, yeah, that guy, paid agent. I'm pretty sure he getting paid off by the big pharma. I'm pretty sure that you know he's using his status as a middle class person or an elite person in his. It matters how deep he is in society. As a professor, he's a middle class person or elite class person. He's using his status in order to make people who are also on his class who have already seen past the bullshit of the opioids and make them reconsider it simply because of the criminalization aspect of it. Now, I agree. You should decriminalize all drugs. But what I disagree with is that um you should let all these people who have been giving prescription drugs and making these people addicted to the stuff on purpose, that should be illegal. The aspect of it that is legal now should be illegal, and the other side of it should be illegal. And with that being said, sheesh, let's go. Prescription opioids, right? Prescription opioids such as oxycodone. That's what the generalized name for that prescription opioid. And oxycodone could be named as oxycodone. That's something I'm familiar with. Peroxidine. I've seen that before myself. Not that I've been prescribed it or nothing, and I never took it, but I just see this stuff sitting around in people's throughout my family, drug cabinets and shit like that. They've been prescribed this shit. Oxyset, and of course you got Percocet on there. A lot of people don't even know that Percocet is a form of oxycodone, and I know people love that shit in America. I've definitely, you know, I ain't on flex. I tried this shit. You feel me? But it ain't like I'm. Nah, I don't fuck with that shit. I don't fuck with it. I've tried it before, as a part when I was younger and I was a part of that culture or whatever. But it ain't really worth it. It ain't really nothing special. It ain't fucking with this right here. It ain't fucking with this right here. Still can go outside and beat a nigga at basketball on this shit. I can still go outside, fucking do half. I could do advanced math equations, stuff that most people. I could still do all that. I could still do push-ups. I could still go fuck my bitch and not worry about all of that. And I'm still doing this. If I was on all the other stuff, no. If I was on a form of oxycodone, I wouldn't be doing all that. Anyway, hydrocodone, acetylcholine. I don't know how to say that shit, honestly. Still learning how to say all these fucking Latin words and shit. Vicodin. So this is the category that Vicodin falls over. This is the category. Let me see what else in this category I'm familiar with. Zydone. That's the ones that those are under. You feel me? So these are a long list of fucking. That's a long list of shit. But just the fact that Vicodin is in that one, that says a lot. You know. Who else? Okay, now we're gonna go down to hydrocodone bitrate. Don't know any of those. I don't know any of those, honestly. Niggas in the hood ain't taking that one right there. Hydrocodone, that one, nope. Hydromat, hydromet. I don't know. That sounds familiar, but I don't think people in the hood taking that either. But this is the point. You will never know because this is prescription stuff. It's private between the person's doctor and them. So you will never know. Like I told y'all, bro. I'm I'm ill right now. I'm on top of this and I'm just getting started. Hold on. So let's see. I'm ill. I'm coming for y'all. Like I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, Kira. I'm coming for you, Kira. Now we're gonna go to fentanyl. I'm sharing all this stuff one by one. I'm showing these different prescription names one by one so people could be aware. You can go to this website, you can connect to the information, but you also need to be looking at these drugs. Anyway, so tramadol. I've heard of that before for sure. Tramadol. Yeah. Oxymorphine hydrochloride. So these are people hacking your fucking body's system. All right. Now, with that being said, we got a list. Now we got a good start. We got a list of culprits, right? We got a list of all these prescription drugs that we could trace back to certain companies where they came from, the company they came from, the people who worked and originally created the chemical formulas for the fucking drugs themselves, all that, bro. We can trace all that now. Now we got these drugs named specifically and that we can see their effects, right? Now we're gonna go over to the history of this. Like I said earlier, um, the reason why the history of this is gonna be important is simply because you gotta see how a lot of these families that are in a position of saying, yeah, capitalism is great. Capitalism, I love capitalism. Everything else would be stupid and it's going to destroy our country. It's because of the fact that as a result of us living in this type of system we do, economy we do, this is a way for people to get away with a win-win situation no matter what. Either they're going to make money or they're going to severely fucking get rid of so many people in a they're going to be a part of murdering, killing so many people in the population that it reduces the amount of competition they have, simply because people are going to be addicted, people are going to be psyched out, and I'm the person who made this drug, so I know not to take it, and if I do take it, I know how to counteract it. So with that being said, we got to be aware of the history. And this ain't nothing new, bruh. So you telling me if they been giving away lambda men and they was giving away lambda men and stuff back then, which y'all about to hear about with this video right here, and then people were getting addicted to it, and then made people have the same effects they're having now: depression, suicidal thoughts, weak immune system, constipation, all this type of weird stuff. You know, why would you continue this? And we're gonna see why right now.
Opioids are drugs that have been used for millennia. They've been used for the treatment of pain. They've been used for spiritual purposes and for recreational purposes because opioids can provide effective pain relief. They can also produce a euphoria. Opioids are drugs that come from opium, and it was about 200 years ago that a German chemist figured out how to isolate one of the more potent molecules in opium, the sap from the opium poppy. What this chemist figured out how to do was to isolate morphine. And it didn't take very long for morphine to begin to make its way into many different medical products that were either prescribed or in some cases sold over the counter. It was in the mid-1800s that the United States began to experience its first opioid crisis. This was an epidemic of opioid addiction that was developing because the population in the US was becoming overexposed to opioids. You had Civil War soldiers who were becoming addicted to morphine that was prescribed to them, but you also had many middle-class, middle-aged housewives who were becoming addicted to morphine. You had many doctors who had as the business model for their medical practice prescribing lots of morphine. These were doctors who might have patients visiting their office multiple times a day to receive a morphine injection. By the late 1800s, the opioid addiction epidemic had grown severe. Overdose deaths involving morphine had risen to very high levels, and there was an awareness among health officials across the United States about the risks and dangers of products containing morphine. It was in the midst of that morphine epidemic that the Bayer Corporation introduced a new opioid called heroin. And when the Bayer Corporation introduced heroin, it actually promoted heroin as a safer alternative to morphine. There was lots of concern about overdose risk with morphine, and so heroin was promoted as having a lower risk of overdose death. And the Bayer Corporation pointed to studies that they had done in mice to try and show that there was less risk of overdose death from decreased breathing. We'll probably never know whether or not those studies were done incorrectly or whether it was all made up as part of a marketing strategy.
You see, these people are so intelligent, but yet, sometimes intelligence, like, wanting to know if 100% or as the highest percentage as possible, whether you're correct or not, that can lead to a lot of stupidity, because you can have about 80% of the information and facts that you need with logic, with your own human experience, because it wasn't that far ago, and you're in the same field of knowledge as them. So you would know that the experiment was obviously fucking rigged. You would know that. You know the result of heroin in today's time. You know the effects of heroin in today's time. So why would you sit right here and just act like somehow back then they could have mistakenly just mixed up something and then it wouldn't have had the same effect it has today? You got, bruh. Come on, brother. Come on, brother.
But we do know that heroin is not safer than morphine. Shortly after heroin was released onto the market, we began seeing a new type of opioid addiction problem. We began seeing young Americans, particularly in urban areas, begin using heroin non-medically. These were young, white street toughs. In New York City, they were the children of immigrants. They were Italian, Irish, Jewish. They were purchasing pharmaceutical grade heroin tablets, crushing them and snorting them. And so we began to see this overlapping epidemic of opioid addiction in non-medical users of prescription opioids. By 1914, the problem had grown so severe that the federal government stepped in and began passing laws to better regulate the sale and prescribing of narcotics. After these laws were passed, we began to see a decline in opioid addiction. It wasn't until after World War II that the United States faced its next opioid addiction epidemic. This time it's an epidemic that's disproportionately affecting inner city non-white populations, and the opioid is black market, illicitly manufactured heroin. And because the heroin that's coming into inner city communities has been cut so many times before it reaches a user, it's heroin that can really only have an effect in people who inject it. So this becomes an injection heroin use epidemic that hits low-income non-white communities very hard. And that's in the 1970s. It wasn't until 1996 that the next opioid addiction epidemic begins. And that next epidemic is
You see, it's funny though, because the response to the way that they treated the inner city opioid crisis, which was a result of the same, opioid pretty much that they figured out was bullshit back in the day. Somehow they saying that these fucking people in the streets learn how to do this shit. Somehow opioids don't grow in America. Let's get that shit straight right now. Opioids don't grow in America North America. They don't grow in like the USA from what I can know, from what I can know. I don't know of no fucking opioids being grown outside of certain places like Asia and South America, But with that being said, they're saying we went to these places, brought it back over here, we started selling to people, and then they started cutting it, and then they started selling it. That's impossible. The people who created it in the first place, like such people as the Suckler family, Sackler family, I mean, not Suckler. Oh wait, let's call them the Suckler. Let's call them the Suckler family. Fuck that. Let's call them the Suckler family. So the Sackler family, Suckler family, aka these people, they know how to they have the resources to go get the opioids. They have the resources to create this shit in a tablet form or whatever form you want, really. They have the extraction process for the certain juices to actually do this stuff. And like I said, I'm not one of these people who gonna sit right here and just say, oh yeah, the only way you get opioids is from the poppy plant. No, bro. Like, no. But with that being said, let's stick to this narrative though, because this is where you can the heroin that we use in America has been traced back to poppy, through chemical testing and shit like that. But with that being said, um, yeah, man, the way they responded to it hitting white communities, like you were saying, in the 1920s or after the World War II, was completely different than when, because they passed so many laws after that shit hit the black communities and the inner city communities, as opposed to back then, they passed very subtle, relaxing laws and allowed these same people to still make the medicine. And then even after they started this quote unquote war on drugs, the big pharma got bigger over this time. The war on drugs is still going to this day, but somehow the opioid crisis still fucking happened. That's amazing, bro. Round of applause for our fucking our war on drugs military. Round of applause to them. They got all the drugs out of the inner city, and then all of the people who weren't in the inner city were still fucking doing. All the people who weren't in the inner city, guess what? They actually go to colleges in a state. They become chemists. They learn how to make the poppy. They go get their own resources. And they start their own. They bro. Why they need the fucking big pharma no more? You feel me? Y'all gonna teach me how to do this shit if I get inside. So, but they ain't letting people like us inside back then. They were not. If they were, it was on a street level. We want you to sell this cut down version of this shit. You feel me? That's what we want you to do. We want you to take what we give you and cut it down. And then the government gonna come in your community, take that shit over, and say it's all because of drugs and violence. When the whole time they're prescribing real fucking opioids to my aunties, my uncles, my grandmas, and then they telling you that the cigarettes is killing you. The cigarettes is giving you cancer. You get me? You feel me? It's everything. It's the weed. It's the mushrooms. It's the acid. All this shit is the problem. It's not the opioids that the doctors are prescribing to the populace of America. It's not that.
The one that we're dealing with today, and the
It's not
epidemic
that.
we're dealing with today is far worse than any drug addiction epidemic the United States has faced previously. When we look at the number of people affected and the number of overdose deaths that we're experiencing. When we talk about our opioid problem, or when we talk about the opioid crisis, it's important to frame the problem in the right way. Our opioid problem, I believe, is an epidemic of opioid addiction, meaning that the reason that we're experiencing record high levels of overdose deaths involving opioids, and the reason that we're seeing heroin flood into communities where it wasn't previously available, and the reason we're seeing soaring rates of infants born opioid dependent, and all of the different health and social problems.
Okay, he just said something key, and I had a note about that, so it's perfect. This video right here is a good start, bro. I'm 36 minutes in. This video probably gonna be longer too, but guess what? It's worth it. It's worth it. Okay, so my woman, she put me onto some shit too. Epidural, you feel me? That's fucking opioid, you know. So, and then on top of that, you know, we have insight to know that they be giving women fentanyl and shit during pregnancies nowadays, and I'm pretty sure it's a controllable amount, you know, but they still offer it to people, and then sometimes they just give it to them without their consent. With that being said, babies are born high off of opioids because of this very reason. You get what I'm saying? The umbilical cord, if a mother actually chooses to get an epidural and she still want, I mean, if she has the wherewithal to be natural enough to still want to keep the umbilical cord on for a while, then that all those opioids are going to go into that baby's bloodstream. If you're natural enough to say, I want to breastfeed, all those opioids, you know, not all of them, because let me get this straight, not all of them, because your body has actual processes to filter out the poisons as much as it can so the baby won't get the poisons in the milk. So I don't want to say that. But with that being said, the umbilical cord, I'm pretty sure with the milk is possible. You get what I'm saying? And that he just said that. He just said that. Let me go back. He just said that.
and the reason we're seeing soaring rates of infants born opioid dependent and all
Infants born opioid dependent. Infants born opioid dependent, bruh. Now, also, what I was put on a game where since we're on this topic, and this is the perfect time for me to express these notes. Postpartum depression. You know, there's studies out there, and I'm gonna show if later on in this video that are gonna link. You know, not saying postpartum depression overall, but overall just opioids and depression and mental health is a very risky factors when you put them together. You feel me? You cannot mix together opioids and mental health, but that's what they give a lot of people who have mental health issues. They give them opioids. So that is why we have such a high suicide rate. That's why we have such a high dependency. I mean, infants born opioid dependent, and that's why we have a lot of postpartum depression also, simply because of the fact that it's an opioid withdrawal after the fact that you've been given fentanyl or like whatever it is. You feel me? Different types of prescriptions to help you with anything that you would have. Maybe it's ripping or something like that. You know, guess what? You got to make sure that shit ain't got no opioids in it. That's why we here. That's why we covering this shit overall so people can stay aware there's solutions to everything. But I sometimes I don't like to focus on the solutions, and and I like to focus on the detail of the problem because everybody can find their own solution at that point. And I can share my solution, you feel me? But everybody can have their own solution at that point as long as there's a detail of the there's a detailed uh transcript of the problem. You feel me? So he just said, I'm gonna go back one more time and I'm gonna pop it off.
and the reason we're seeing soaring rates of infants born opioid dependent and all of the different health and social problems. The driver has been a sharp increase in the number of Americans suffering from opioid addiction. The CDC has been very clear about the cause of our current opioid addiction epidemic. What the CDC has shown is that as prescriptions for opioids began to increase rapidly beginning in the 1990s, as the prescribing went up, it led to parallel increases in rates of addiction and overdose deaths. So what the CDC has really been saying is that this is an epidemic that has been caused inadvertently by the medical community overprescribing opioids. As the prescribing went up, it led to an epidemic of addiction and overdose deaths. Now, the reason that the medical community began to prescribe opioids much more aggressively starting in the 1990s has a lot to do with the way in which opioids were marketed. It was in 1996
Marketed.
that OxyContin was
Nigga did the dab on the market part.
and the drug company that manufactures OxyContin, when it put the medication on the market, it launched a campaign to encourage opioid prescribing. The manufacturer of OxyContin wanted to see the drug used for common conditions, but they had a problem. Back in the early 90s, many doctors understood that opioids are highly addictive. And we understood that there are limitations to using them for chronic non-cancer pain. We knew that if you put a patient on an opioid chronically, that the risk of addiction would go up if the patient's taking the opioid long term. We knew that patients would very quickly develop a tolerance to the pain relieving effect, meaning that they would need higher and higher doses in order to get pain relief. And we knew that even if a patient didn't clearly get addicted, the physiological dependence that would set in would make it hard for many patients to ever come off of opioids. So in the early 90s, the medical community understood that opioids should be prescribed cautiously for chronic pain. We knew these are essential medicines for end-of-life care and essential medicines to be used short-term for severe pain, for example, after major surgery. But we knew better than to use them aggressively for conditions like low back pain, chronic headache, fibromyalgia. But when OxyContin was introduced, the manufacturer reframed these very good reasons for being cautious with opioids as barriers to compassionate pain care. In educational programs that were sponsored by the drug company, 20,000 educational programs in the first 6 years of the release of OxyContin, doctors
Y'all have to understand that shit. 20,000 educational programs. Literally, what they call educational programs is basically propaganda scripts. You know, they're foot soldiers. They're what they call that shit on Indeed.com. I forgot. Anyway, they're those type of people. But that's a lot of fucking energy going into that.
began to hear that the risk of addiction had been overblown, that we've been allowing patients to suffer needlessly, that we can be much more compassionate if we prescribe opioids more liberally. And we didn't just hear this in educational programs that were sponsored by drug companies. We heard these messages from our professional societies, from our hospitals, from our state medical boards. So from every direction, primary care doctors begin hearing that if you're an enlightened physician and a concerned, compassionate physician, brilliant campaign, and as the prescribing increased, it led to the epidemic that we're dealing with today.
Okay, that's Harvard right there. That's Harvard. So y'all niggas out there who on that goddamn, classism shit, who be like, oh yeah, I need some motherfucking official shit. That's it right there. So this is right here is Democracy Now. And I fuck with Democracy Now sometimes. They be on top of this right here. I'm L from Death Note, and I'm coming for Kita. But guess what? Democracy Now, they be on top of that shit. You feel me? And we're gonna do it like this.
I'm Amy Goodman. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says U.S. drug overdose deaths skyrocketed to a recent 93,000 last year, a nearly 30% increase. That's the largest one-year increase ever recorded. Overdoses rose in 48 of 50 states. Opioid overdoses accounted for nearly 2/3 of the deaths, driven in part by synthetic opioids like fentanyl.
Okay, so crime of the century, right? This is how it's being presented by Democracy Now. They're a journalist, you feel me? And they're breaking it down in a perspective like this is a crime. They're saying, because they're not a part of Big Pharma. They're not being paid by Big Pharma. So they're seeing it from a point of view as a regular citizen. So far we've been seeing it from the point of view of people who are at Harvard, people who are at Stanford. What was the other place I had showed y'all at first? What's the name of this shit I be going to? Hopkins medicine and shit. That's the people that we've been getting information from so far, their perspective. They haven't seen it as a crime because I'm pretty sure they're a part of this. Everybody who is a part of medicine and Big Pharma, they profit off of this, So, and doctors, as a result of the way that we run our healthcare system here, or the way that we look at health overall is based off of capitalism. People don't really have a way to curve this. People don't have a way to fight back against this. If you try to sue these companies, you got to have a really good lawyer. You got to have an attorney general of a whole state or something like that on your side. Outside of that, these people have so much money to do what they got to do to win that case, bro. It's ridiculous. And we got to see it from this perspective too.
Which is 50 times stronger than heroin. Overall, drug overdoses accounted for more deaths in 2020
Oh no,
than
we can't
car
watch this whole
crashes,
video right
gun
here.
violence, and HIV/AIDS
We
combined.
can't watch this whole video.
This comes as the nation continues to deal with the fallout from the devastating opioid epidemic that has killed over 500,000 people in the United States since 1999. 15 states recently agreed to abandon their fight to block the bankruptcy plan of Purdue Pharma, the maker of the highly addictive OxyContin. In exchange, Purdue will release tens of millions of documents and pay a settlement expected to reach $4.5 billion. The owners of Purdue, the Sackler family, will agree to cede ownership of Purdue, but will not have to admit responsibility for their role in fueling the opioid epidemic. They'll also be shielded from future opioid lawsuits. Meanwhile, closing arguments will be held next week in a closely watched federal trial in West Virginia against the nation's 3 largest drug distributors. We turn now to a stunning 2-part documentary directed by Alex Gibney about Big Pharma's role in driving the opioid crisis. It's called The Crime of the Century.
I came out of the doctors, and there was a representative of Purdue. She said, we have a drug called oxycodone.
Okay, so y'all got to realize this right here is kind of what the show Dope Sick is going into. But with that being said, this right here was released July 19th, 2021. I want y'all to see that because this is actually a very recent topic and it's very on hand. So this is something that is actively going on. Like I said, many of our aunties, grandmas, uncles, dads, brothers, sometimes they're prescribed this stuff, or sometimes they just fucking buy it from other people just to get geeked up off the shit, and they don't even realize the effect that that's having on them. And never mind, I can honestly say they know the effect that's having on them, but they're ignoring it. So
we pick up all the costs. Just take as much as you need. I said, sounds like a deal.
Within the last 20 years, more than 500,000 Americans have been killed by overdoses. Controlled release OxyContin would be the drug that triggered the opioid crisis. But what if we discovered that the crisis started with a crime?
When we talk about drugs like oxycodone, you're talking about drugs that are essentially heroin pills. Opioid makers started to promote their opioids for common chronic pain conditions.
okay, so that's enough of that. I don't want to get my video scratched. I hope this video can still even be posted on YouTube now, just because of the HBO shit. But I don't know. I didn't know that was gonna be in there anyway. Even more recently, in more recent news about the opioid crisis going on right now. This happened in June right here. I mean, not more recently, obviously, it's some June shit. But in June this year, Purdue Pharma was sued by Massachusetts Attorney General. And I think after that, she said 13 of the states that were pursuing suing them, they dropped their charges. But like I said, and I showed y'all in a couple articles, let me show y'all the articles again. Right here, they say they win immunity. They said they win immunity. Okay. They said they win immunity. Win it. How the fuck you win that shit? But they also say right here, Tompkins County receives 1.75. That's not a lot, honestly. That's not a lot, because what I can obviously pull up right here is persistencemarketresearch.com. persistencemarketresearch.com. Market for semi-synthetic opioids exhibits promising investment opportunities for investors owing to high profit margins. Increasing number of prescriptions of semi-synthetic opioids, then synthetic opioids, will fuel segmental revenue in the North America synthetic opioid market. Just like fentanyl. They're talking about fentanyl, probably. I think they talking about fentanyl. I think that's what they talking about. But yeah. Rise in the number of the patients suffering from terminal illnesses such as severe cough resulting from lung infection. So instead of you taking tea, you're gonna take some opioids. Wow. Lung infection, cancer, HIV, along with high surge and prescription in the US. Okay, I'm looking for the numbers. Okay, right here. We got the numbers. North American synthetic opioid market value. By product type, 2016, semi-synthetic opioids have a market value of $68.9 billion. And that was in 2016. And they saying every year it's going to increase by 2.4%. Market segmentation by country, US and Canada. That's interesting. So we got $68 billion, and it's probably, it's probably at 70 billion by now. $70 billion a year industry. And they only won 1.75 million. They give you money after people die. And these people, these criminals who in everyday life, they would consider us criminals if we did some shit like this. But because these people have PhDs and they can say, oh my God, we didn't mean to do this. We really thought we were helping people. They can do that shit. And they slide out of that bitch. Slithering. But guess what? I'm L. I'm coming for you, Kita. You feel me? Let's go. We're going to get back to that interview. We're going to get back to that press conference later on. Because they got some powerful people speaking at that press conference that I'm going to share. But right now, I want to talk about mental health and opioid use disorder. How are they connected? Okay, now let's go to this one right here. Wait, that's the same one? They gonna take me to the tab or no? I guess not. Okay. Okay, this is what I wanted to look at right here, but I'm gonna lead up to it with a little juice. Effect of mental health on opioid use. Opioid use is very common among people with mental health conditions. I was saying, like I said earlier, about 16% of adults in the United States have mental health conditions, yet they receive more than half of all the opioid prescriptions, according to a 2017 study that I can easily go to and click the link. Or if you want to go to the website and click the link, you can to see the study. Okay, excuse me. I'm gonna have to cut that out. People with mood and anxiety disorders are more than 3 times as likely to use these medications than people without mental health conditions. So what they saying is this: just like niggas, you know how not people, not niggas, people. Just like people in states where weed is legal will go and they go to their doctor and say, "Oh my God, I'm depressed," or "Oh my God, I'm anxious." "Oh, I feel like my knee is hurting me. Can you prescribe me? I've heard there's that marijuana will help me. Is there possible that you could prescribe that for me?" And they get them a prescription because that's what they do. These doctors are really just there. As I'm studying myself, like I said, I'm on course RA right now, and I'm not saying I'm a fucking professional, fucking expert or nothing like that. But what I'm studying in a course is called Integrative Health and Medicine, right? So with that being said, one of the first things in the introduction they tell you about is how to treat your patients. And one of the first things they're telling you is that you have to basically bend to your patient's will. You can suggest certain things to them, but at the end of the day, you can't force them to take nothing. You can write them a prescription for what you think is best for them, but you can't force them to take it at the end of the day, right? But with that being said, you can persistently insist that they do. You can tell them the dangers of what happen if they don't, and blah blah blah. There's certain things you can do, but there's certain things you can't do. Basically, what I'm saying. But you, as a doctor, you're required to tell, or anybody who's prescribing medicine, you're required to tell the people you're prescribing the medicine to or the substance to the risk and the benefits of it. You're required to show them studies that prove what you're saying could be used for the condition that I'm saying I need help with. With that being said, like I said earlier, they don't do that really. Doctors don't really do that. If I come to you and I'm rich and you paying me, I'm paying you millions of dollars a year. Like, I'm your highest paying fucking patient right now. Every time I come in, I get everything done. I want to make sure everything good. You feel me? I always come in on time. I take all the prescriptions you give me and shit like that. And I come in and I say, yeah, I'm having some back pains. And I heard that there's a drug out there called oxycodone that can really help me. They will give you that shit. As long as they can prove in any way, I guess, that you are actually having that symptoms. But they don't have to at the end of the day. They don't really have to prove that. The only proof they need is you telling them that you're having that symptom. Really. So with that being said, about 16% of adults in the United States have mental health conditions, yet they receive more than half of all the opioid prescriptions. So the people who have mental health conditions are also addicted to opioid prescriptions. And I wonder if it's vice versa. I wonder if the opioid prescriptions really cause the mental health conditions, because they not just put opioids in, they put opioids in your food as preservatives and all that shit, bro. Let's be real. Let's be real. So, yeah, people with mood and anxiety disorders are more than 3 times as likely to use these medications than people without mental health conditions. Okay. People with depression are also 3.63 times as likely to misuse opioids, according to a 2018 study involving people with chronic pain. So they're basically flipping it around, but I would say the opioids, the way they're wording it is kind of making me feel like they're trying to flip it, but I'm gonna still say it the way I want to say it, which is basically that the opioids are causing people with depression to have depression, basically. And then as a result of them their depression is as a result of them having either withdrawal symptoms or needing a higher dosage to get the feeling that they had at first. You get what I'm saying? So more severe depression was associated with higher risk of opioid misuse. When compared with study patients without depression, participants with severe depression are 14.66 times as likely to misuse opioids. Okay. Having a mental health condition also increases your odds of using opioids long term. Adults with mood disorders are around twice as likely to take these medications for longer periods than those with no mental health conditions. So let's get this straight, man. That's earlier I was telling y'all about the musicians and the rappers and the entertainers and sports musicians and sports entertainers and all that stuff. These people that we consider to be superheroes, they are fucking they're like buffed up chemically. They on all that shit. That's all I can say. They on all that shit. And I'm not saying all of them are, don't get me wrong, but a good amount of them are. So there's a lot of pride going around in the African American community. And the pride is about people having mental health problems, basically. Like, people are pridefully bipolar, people are pridefully depressed. People are pridefully have anxiety. They don't want to take care of it. They don't want to, you feel me? And the reason why is because they're in their mind, they're already taking care of it because they're being prescribed these medicines, which they think are supposed to be helping them. But in reality, they're it's a perpetual pathology. It's a perpetual pathology that makes them suffer mentally, physically, physiologically, mentally, spiritually, all that. So be careful. That's all I can say, I guess. A reverse relationship also exists, with some evidence suggesting that opioid use can contribute to symptoms of mental health condition. A 2016 study looked at rates of depression in adults across 3 large healthcare systems. Using data collected between 2002 and 2012, between 8.4 and 11.6% of people who use opioids for 1 to 30 days develop depression within 12 months of following their opioid use. So, let me say it again, between 8.4 and 11.6% of people who use opioids for 1 to 30 days develop depression within 12 months following their opioid use. Now, a lot of people might say that's not a lot, but that's just a study. You feel me? That's just a study, a controlled study, and I don't know. And let's see what they say. A different study, 2016 study, looked at rates of depression in people with Veterans Health Administration, within the Veterans Health Administration, the VA system, who were prescribed opioids for at least 30 days. Opioid use took place between 2000 and 2001, while the follow-up period of the study lasted between 2000 and 2012. Over time, people who only took codeine were 29% more likely to receive a new diagnosis of depression than those who only took hydrocodone. Now, the thing about the fucking lean, that's what they call it in the culture that they've constructed for the African American inside of the Matrix. Lean, lean, lean. They call it lean. They call it, lean, Percocets, Codon, all that shit. Weed is on there too, but those things are popular in today's pop culture. And we all know why. Because of the fact that we all know why all this music is depressing as fuck. All these people around these people are dying all the time. All these people are fucking savages. They savages. They don't give a fuck. You feel me? It's because of the capitalistic system, for one. And secondly, when we go back to it, to depression, they're depressed. They're severely depressed because of these drugs. It's destroying the receptors in their brain. It's destroying their nerves. It's destroying their liver and their kidney and their pancreas and they balls. So, yeah. The longer they use opioids, the greater the risk of developing depression. A 2020 study also found that the use of prescription opioids may increase the risk of both major depressive disorder and anxiety and stress-related disorder. So a lot of people out here, literally at their birth, they were geeked up. You feel me? And as a baby, that's a lot. I would like, and I'm gonna be real, bro. It's comparing a giving, like, both of these things, not, in my opinion, shouldn't be a thing that you should do. Obviously, you shouldn't do this. I would never do this, but there's people out there who obviously do stuff like that because the world is free, and I wouldn't suggest it, but some people do. So with that being said, a lot of people, if you would compare giving a baby fentanyl, epidural, and what else? Let's just say prescribe Percocet or Vicodin afterwards for the pain or ripping or some shit. You can find those three, and or you could just give the baby uh a 3-5 of mushrooms. Do you know what the effect of that shit on that baby would? I don't even, bro. The fact that babies live after that, it has an effect on you. You can't just say that this shit doesn't have an effect on people. You get what I'm saying? And I've dealt with depression before in my life, so I'm pretty sure. I don't know my mother's birth story, completely, but I'm pretty sure she probably had an epidural or something, you know. Or overall, I was prescribed different medicines in my youth, and I don't know what the fuck I was prescribed. I used to have headaches and shit like that, and nosebleeds and stuff, so I don't know. But I know for a fact, after I started taking medicines and stuff, I got depressed, you know, and that shit has an effect on people. So that's just my personal experience right there. The risk of opioid use. While opioids are effective at relieving pain, they can also lead to physical dependence and addiction. Dependence means you need opioids to function well. That's crazy. It's crazy how they work it. They try to make it as scientific as possible just to justify. They try to make it as polite and justifiable as possible for these fucking criminals. And I don't even wait. Never mind. They're not even criminals. For these fucking assholes. They fucking assholes, bro. While opioids are effective at relieving pain, they can lead to physical dependence and addiction. Dependence means you need opioids to function well. Addiction is when you continue to use opioids even though they cause harmful effects. Consciously, you don't know this though, because your doctor is still giving you the shit just because you're saying you got pain, even though he knows that there's a dependency at that point. He will still keep giving it to you because it's easy. It's easier that way. It's easier. You know how I don't know if you ever worked in the kitchen before, but I used to work in the kitchen. So in the kitchen, people always say work smarter, not harder. And that's basically a colloquialism for people saying, or that's basically a way of people saying, uh, do it the easiest and fastest way as possible, but present it as if you're doing it, as if you're taking your time and you did it step by step. You know what I'm saying? And with that being said, I think that applies to almost every job. And we give so much trust to people just because they have doctorates and they pass tests and they've been given grants and they've been given certain statuses in life. And don't get me wrong, we need surgeons and doctors and all that shit out there. So I'm not trying to dog nobody, but there are assholes out here still giving fucking people addictive medicines knowing they're addictive. You're an asshole. I don't give a fuck about nothing else besides the fact that you're causing harm to people. You're conscious of the fact that this stuff is addictive, but they might not be conscious of the fact that this stuff is addictive. They see it in their culture as, oh shit, I'm getting high. I get a little high side effect from this shit. Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm about to go to sleep. That's how they see it. They're not thinking about the fact that they've been using this shit for how long and the fact that they need more to feel it, or the fact that they might be depressed or unmotivated or something like that. So opioids are believed to change the brain chemistry in a way that makes you need more and more of them to get the same effect. Over time, taking increasingly larger doses leads to dependence. Trying to stop opioid use can lead to withdrawal symptoms such as sweating, insomnia, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, irritability, tremors, anxiety. People who take too many opioids can overdose. They just say it. People who take too many opioids can overdose. Just to say it. We're gonna name all this other stuff, but you can't overdose too. You can't overdose on sea moss. You can't overdose on nettle leaf. You can't well, I don't know about, well, never mind. For the most part, you can't overdose on nettle leaf. You can't overdose on almost none of this stuff. You know, if you taking it the same amount you taking this stuff, you definitely can't overdose on it. And you can't overdose on sage. You can't overdose on none of that shit, bro. So why? Why are they prescribing opioids instead of natural shit? That's what I want to know. That's all I want to know at that point. In 2019, 49,860 people in the United States died from an opioid overdose. Fucked up, bro. This is the equivalent of nearly 137 overdoses each day. Now, having a mental health condition increases the odds of overdosing. So, this is where I'm about to get in my conspiracy bag. You know, hold on, because I'm gonna finish this right quick before I get back to Shawty and her press conference, and then I'm gonna end it off right there. Why mental health and opioid addiction are connected? After I talk about this, somebody get into my conspiracy bag. I got to. I'm sorry, bro. There are a few possible reasons for the link between mental health and opioid addiction. Pain is a common morbidity for people with health conditions. Pain is a common comorbidity for people with health conditions. People with depression and other mental health conditions may self-medicate with opioids to alleviate their symptoms. People with mental health conditions could have genes that are increase their risk of addiction. Quote unquote, heavenly melanated people. Heavenly melanated people. That's who. Because that's where the shit is growing at. I'm not saying, I mean, in the parts of Asia where it's growing, they not heavily melanated, but they melanated. They not fucking, it's not growing in Europe, from what I know. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't done no deep research on exactly where it's grown completely, to be honest. But just using my common sense and what I've been told so far. Why mental health and trauma, such as a physical or emotional abuse, can contribute to both mental health conditions and addiction. Obviously, that's obvious. But what if the opioids are a traumatic experience themselves? You know, opioids can cause people to have traumatic experiences. How to avoid addiction? If you live with depression, anxiety, or mental health conditions, here are a few things you can do to avoid opioid addiction. Care for your mental health. Bruh, y'all ain't shit, bro. I'm about to, bruh. Take only as needed. They still out here trying to justify the shit. Watch for signs of addictions. Takeaway. What's the takeaway from this? Let's see what they takeaway gonna be on healthline.com. Takeaway: opioids are very effective pain relievers because they get you geeked up. They can be useful for treating short-term pain, such as after surgery or an injury. They can also lead to dependence or addiction when used long-term. Even though we've already had studies out there that have shown that there's more than 10% of people, which would be considered a risky amount of people, who automatically get depression, anxiety, or overdose on the fucking drug, on opioids, every fucking year. Using opioids can increase the risk of developing a mental health condition. That's what they say. It can. They keep saying can. It does. It does. This ain't no can, bro. The wording for this is some real magician type shit. They trying to be magicians, saying can. It's like they getting paid off themselves just to write this article. If you have mental health condition, If you have a mental health condition, speak with a healthcare professional before taking opioids. Discuss the risk. Discuss the risk. Like I said, that's what they're required to do. Discuss the risk, but still give you the shit. And ask whether there are other pain relief options you can try instead. But if I'm a doctor, if I'm getting paid off, or if I'm friends with the person who gives me the goddamn opioids, or the company that gives me the opioids, if I have a connection with them, why would I inform you about the other stuff that you can do for your pain? Why the fuck would I do that? You got me fucked up. You tripping. Why would I do that? So, thank you for that takeaway, healthline.com. Thank you. That was a nice takeaway, dude. With that being said, hopping in my conspiracy bag right now.
My name is Chris Johnson, and I'm an emergency physician, and I'm going to talk to you today about the opioid epidemic. I have been involved in fighting this epidemic and this crisis and watched it evolve from my experience as an ER physician for the last 15 years. I've sort of had a seat on the front lines, if you will. And unlike some of the other talks or other presentations you might have heard about this epidemic, I want to talk to you about how it happened, and maybe more importantly, why it happened. I'm going to tell you right now, it was not an accident. No one should leave this lecture wondering, I guess no one saw that coming. People saw it coming. And I'm going to talk to you about how that happened. And I'm going to begin with an apology. On the behalf of the medical industry, we failed you. Those of us in charge of looking out for your health and safety failed you. And I'm going to detail that failure in the next 17 minutes. My background, I'm originally from Virginia, and I moved to Minnesota.
We have so many different aspects of our society failing the public. The aspects of it that are supposed to be serving the public, they always fail. But the aspects of it that are serving the private select few, they always, if they fail, they get instantaneously pieced back together, built back up, everything's running back like nothing ever happened. Forget about it. You didn't kill nobody. Bayer, you didn't do shit. You could keep selling medicine all over the world and lying to people about the real effects of it and hiding medical trials that show that these medicines cannot be taken by human beings. They should not be taken by human beings. They shouldn't even be taken by rats and shit sometimes. So, they shouldn't even be taken by rats and shit at all. They shouldn't be taken by nobody. Let these fucking opioids grow where they're gonna grow, and let the fucking bugs and plants and the bugs and all the other shit, or the people who actually just want to be dope heads, let them do that shit. But don't prescribe it to people who are innocently trying to get pain relief when they can get pain relief from something way, way less risky than that. And that's where I get my conspiracy bag. Obviously, I was gonna go into it, but I remember that I had this video already loaded up. The fact that, doctors are in on this shit too. And we already know doctors are in on it. But with that being said, the conspiracy is that the public are idiots. A lot of the people who work in the medical industry, they are aware of all the problems that happen inside of the medical industry. They are aware of all the issues. They know how to solve them. But everybody's so comfortable in the hierarchy of the society that they get from the status of being in certain jobs and positions at colleges and research centers and all that type of stuff, that they become addicted to collecting the data without actually doing anything about it, and that's insane because our justice system completely ignores all this stuff. The hypocrisy of our justice system is insane. It's insane. And if you piece it together, you can see that the war on drugs and the communities and the parts and the sectors of the society that affected And then, you know, the years and all the shit that Joe Biden and the Democrats did in the 1990s and all the racist shit that the country is already built off of in its infrastructure and the way that people think in the country, it all leads to somehow black people being blamed for all this stuff. Not black people, not just black people, but Mexicans crossing the border bringing drugs over here, and you know, foreigners coming in with their, and the foreigners that who are coming in are they fucking cousins and shit. And when these people do this stuff, nothing happens to them. But you go on the news every day. Like I got a new segment on my channel where I'm doing, and I'm basically spending 30 minutes one day out the week just basically updating y'all and myself on recent articles on the shit that I'm interested in on my Google News feed. But with that being said, let's see. On there, every time you're probably going to see something about killings or death happening, you know, in the city. And they'll be like, oh yeah, these people are monsters. These people rape people, kill people. But if they're doing it in the name of what America has stamped as, uh, this is our opioid research. But if you do opioid research, you're not gonna be able to do it because you're gonna do it the wrong way. And if we do it, we're gonna do it the right way, and it's the most safest way possible. You know, and you got to pay for this shit. You have to pay for it. It's coming out your pocket, and if not, the government will literally build an insurance up, not for the stuff that can actually help you without the risk. They gonna build an insurance up that'll cover every fucking opioid that you could possibly want, and all you had to do is pay $15. But if you want something else that's not that, yeah, you won't pay out of pocket. You feel me? That's weird. All this is linked together, bro. It's a construct and it's a matrix, bro. I don't see how y'all don't see this shit at this point. If you're not seeing it, if you're seeing it, put a clapping emoji in. Put a clapping emoji in the fucking comments or something, you know. But it's a conspiracy, bro. And even the doctor himself said it, and he gonna sit on the stage and he apologized and he can go on and tell the detail of it. But I'm the type person like, yeah, go tell me. You gonna tell me the detail of it. But also, since you saying you failed us, bruh, either they gotta completely free all the people who are arrested in prisons and jails for reckless, stupid, petty crimes, or they need to go into jail right now because they're not following the Hippocratic oath. They are breaking the law. They're not following all the oaths that they took as doctors. All the reasons they tell you they're doctors is fucking false, and they doing it all for money, bro. And if that ain't illegal, and if that ain't fucking a fucked up society, that then the whole justice system just need to go to hell. If that's not considered illegal in this country, then the whole justice system needs to go to hell. Because how are you gonna arrest the people on the street selling this shit and put them in jail, but you're not gonna arrest the people who are actually giving and prescribing people. And even if you do arrest them or put them in jail or some shit like that, you're not gonna put it on the news. You're not gonna put it in the same light as you would a person on the street selling it, because they quote unquote kill when they do it, or they shoot people and they're violent. Violence is based off of opinion.
To train in emergency medicine at Hennepin County Medical Center, and I trained there from 2000 to 2003, and that was my introduction to the problem of substance use. And I'll be honest, when you train and work in a county hospital, you can be a little dismissive of it, because in a county hospital population, you see lots of social pathology, broken families, parents incarcerated, lack of opportunities in education, and you kind of think, well, substance use goes along with that. But then in 2003, I graduated my residency and I began practicing here at Methodist Hospital in St. Louis Park. And I was seeing the same thing. I couldn't go a shift without seeing a patient coming in with chronic pain exacerbation or possibly an overdose on high doses of opioids that they were taking every day. And this is why I began investigating the cause of this problem and hopefully come up with some solutions. So the problem, what are opioids and why are we talking about them? Well, a little history. The use of opioids as a medicine for pain goes back as far as written civilization. The Greeks, the Assyrians, the Persians all documented use of this medicinal plant for the use and treatment of pain. And the traditional method of getting morphine was this. This is the seed pod of the opium poppy Papaver somniferum. And the way you collected that medicine was you made a slice in it and collected this milky substance which contains morphine. Now, the reason it's called somniferum actually goes back to Roman mythology. Somnus was the god of sleep, and so when we give patients, or you've seen someone receive these drugs, they become tired or sleepy, they are somnolent. And as we all remember, somnus first appeared in our literature with Ovid's Metamorphoses, which was the Latin epic poem detailing the history of the world up until Julius Caesar, 15 volumes. I thought the first 9 volumes flew by the way. With all to get to the you got an army. And actually, morphine comes to us from mythology as well. Morpheus was the Greek god of dreams. And opioids help treat pain in 2 basic ways. One is that they actually block the strength of the pain nerve signal from periphery to your spinal cord. And so that inhibits the experience of pain. But the more important one for our purposes is this. Opioids make you feel good. And by altering your mood, they alter your perception of pain. Pain is an emotional experience, sort of like all of life is. And what opioids do is they increase your mood by increasing dopamine in your reward center. And this is a simplified version, but if this is your brain and your reward center without opioids, and you have a little steady stream of dopamine in your reward center, and your brain feels, I'm okay. And then what happens with opioids, heroin, morphine, whatever, is that you have this flood of dopamine, and you think, my God, that was awesome. And that is how it affects your experience of pain. The problem is that opioids carry risk. They also bind receptors in your brain that control your breathing, and in high enough doses can stop your breathing. And once you stop breathing, you've got a few minutes to restore oxygen to your brain or heart, or you die thereafter of asphyxiation or cardiac arrest. So what's the problem?
Overdose.
The problem is that the United States has 4.5% of the world's population, but we consume 30% of the world's opioid pain relievers. That sounds crazy. Was it always like this? It was not. From the years 1992 to 2012, the number of prescriptions of opioids in this country tripled. And I don't have to tell you, the population of this country did not triple. But the number of prescriptions is actually only part of the story. Here's another part. The size of the prescriptions got bigger. So it wasn't just the number of prescriptions being written, the amount of opioid in every prescription massively increased. This graph here, you can tell that these are years at the bottom, but this is oxycodone consumption in the United States in blue and Europe in red. And so here we are, oxycodone is the pain reliever in Percocet. So here we are, a little bit above Europe per person, up until the mid-90s, and then we did that. So it wasn't just a number, it was the size of the pill, so we had this massive increase in opioid exposure in this population coming from the medical industry. But that's only part of our problem now. You guys have all seen the stories about heroin and fentanyl, and I would encourage you not to view these as separate problems. They are intimately related and followed on the heels of the increase in opioid prescribing. These are opioids. They bind the same places of the brain. Do not view them as dramatically separate chemicals, okay? 3 out of 4 users of heroin began with pills. And often what happens is that a patient who became dependent on the pills over years and found their supply getting more difficult to come by or too expensive, they would turn to heroin, which was often cheaper. The result of this massive increase in opioid prescribing and now uses of heroin and fentanyl has led to a massive increase in overdose deaths. In the year 1999, the total number of opiate overdose deaths in this country was 6,000. That was 4,000 from prescription opioids and then another 2,000 from heroin. In 2016, that number had climbed to 50,000.
What the?
You want to know what 50,000 looks like? Well, that would be 16 World Trade Centers, and you're still 2,000 short. And all of you might remember, we went to war over just one of these. The United States has 4.5% of the world's population, but we have 27, almost 20% of the world's drug overdose deaths. So how and why did this happen? This has been a problem that we've seen in the inner cities, but then it's also now moved out to the suburbs and the affluent. It has affected some of our greatest artists, but it doesn't spare the athletes. So how and why did this happen? I would like to tell you.
I want y'all to know I haven't seen this yet. This is my first time seeing this. I just seen the title and I clicked it. That's how I do my videos and the research for my podcast. So this is a reaction video also. It's just my analysis of the videos I'm watching in deep aspects.
That it was good intentions gone awry, perfect storm, wrong place, wrong time, but that is simply not true. The medical industry has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. In particular, the power and influence of the pharmaceutical industry and the ascendance in my profession, again, of meeting corporate imperatives above all else. So how did the opioid manufacturers gain control of the marketplace? They did a number of tactics that I'm going to talk you through. Number one is this. They recruit pain specialists at academic centers to be the sort of key opinion leaders and thought leaders, and their goal is to convince the medical community, workaday docs like people like me, that our reluctance to use opioids for chronic pain conditions was misplaced, that opioids were safer than we had thought they were, and that there was so much pain out there. We were negligent in how much pain we were permitting to occur. That pain was an undertreated epidemic. There was a number of these doctors that they recruited, but possibly the most important one was this gentleman here, Dr. Russell Portnoy. He was the subject of the Wall Street Journal article, Pain Drug Champion Has Second Thoughts, published in 2012. He saw his job as rehabilitating the medical community of opiophobics, people with an irrational fear of opiates. He was president of the American Pain Society in 1995, and it was the American Pain...
Not marijuana, not mushrooms, not herbs, opioids. Synthetic opioids, natural opioids. Why are you afraid of them? Why are you afraid? They're just opioids. What are you afraid of? That you'll get addicted to something? That you'll overdose? Ah, you're a bitch. Give me my fucking opioids back.
Pain Society that came up with this. Pain was a vital sign. I remember these buttons when I was a resident. My faculty had it. I had it. You wore them on your scrubs. Patients, pain was to be taken as seriously as blood pressure, heart rate, temperature in terms of predicting potential morbidity for a patient. That's how seriously we were to take their reported pain levels. Dr. Portnoy published an article, a position statement in the Clinical Journal of Pain in 1996, stating that the risk of addiction from opiates when used for pain was less than 1%. Less than 1%. Boy, that sure sounds safer than I was led to believe. Do you know where that less than 1% statistic came from? It came from an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was published in 1980 by Jane Porter and Herschel Jick, and it demonstrated that opioids were less than 1% became addicted to opiates. And I'm going to use the balance of my time to go through that study, the statistic. I'm just kidding. You can read the whole thing in 90 seconds. This is it. It was a 5-sentence letter to the editor. This is the study that supposedly proved that opiates for use with pain, they weren't addictive. Now, all they did was they didn't actually intend this to say that at all. I mean, remember, this was written in 1980, and like 16 years later, they're now saying it proves opiates aren't addictive. All they did was they followed hospitalized patients who had an acute injury, about 12,000 of them, and then followed them afterwards to see how many developed addiction. They weren't put on opiates indefinitely. These were acute injury patients who just received a dose or two in the hospital. It said nothing about treating chronic pain with opiates. And this was the great failure of medical ethics. This is where we truly let the population down, because that sort of paragraph is, in scientific terms, is called an observational study. You look after the fact and you observe. That's interesting, okay? That's the beginning of the process. That's not the end. What you should do after you observe this is like, how do we prove this? Do we think that more people can take these safely indefinitely? Let's do an experiment. The experiment was never done. The longest experiment done for opiates for use with chronic pain was 12 weeks. Most were just 6. It is on that basis that we started prescribing opioids on an indefinite basis to patients. Now, what does Dr. Portnoy say now about opiates? Well, in a taped interview, I gave innumerable lectures about addiction in the 80s and 90s that weren't true. If I had an inkling of what I know now then, I wouldn't have spoken the way I spoke. By the way, the Wall Street Journal also identified millions in donations to his pain clinic, which pays him from opioid manufacturers. Tactic 2, market to the primary care doctors. This was not done until 1996, and one product changed all that. OxyContin, released by Purdue Pharma in 1996 as a continuous release preparation of oxycodone, which again is the pain reliever in Percocet. Prior to 1996 in OxyContin, extended release opioids or ongoing use of opioids was reserved for hospice patients. It was prescribed typically by pain specialists and cancer doctors for people at sort of end-of-life care. But here's the thing, you can't make billions on hospice patients. First of all, there aren't that many. And then number two, they expire. You can make billions on back pain. And that's exactly what they set out to do. And the way you get to back pain and treat people for a long time, and the most people, is you get to primary care. And that's exactly what happened. In unprecedented numbers, drug representatives flooded the primary care clinics, often making a visit every week. They would have gifts and food and flattery. There's multiple, like this, 40 conferences in 5 years. That's like more than every 2 months. And they invited the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, everyone involved, and the opiate delivery food chain was included. And they didn't forget the patients. For patients, you got free drugs. OxyContin had a starter coupon program where your first prescription was free. Now tell me that isn't like the creepy guy outside the high school. Your little bag. It's I'm your friend. Here, just try this. Tactic 3, influence government and regulatory bodies to favor increased prescribing. You needed to do this for a couple reasons. One is you still had to get approval for your product to make sure you could, it was indicated in market. And the other reason is that while the pain specialist sort of gave us permission to prescribe, if you really want to increase prescribing, have a stick. Not just a carrot, but a stick. And in 1992, the primary client of the FDA since 1992 is basically the pharmaceutical industry. And this is a direct consequence of something called the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. Half of the FDA's budget is now provided by the industry. And that actually,
His video came out in 2018. And he said just now. So I'm pretty sure it's the same way the FDA is bought off by these people. It's the Food and Drug Administration. You feel me? And that shit is stupid. It's somehow they say monopoly is illegal, but the government has a monopoly though. So with that being said, that's idiocracy. And with that being said, also, people are, like I said earlier, not conscious of the fact when they're taking this stuff that they can get addicted, but these doctors are. And the predatory ways that they get these doctors to do this stuff, it's very obvious that should be illegal itself. But the focus of people are always about, oh, we made a mistake, we're sorry, we're going to do better now. And instead of them focusing on the aspect where the perspective of everybody could be equal out, and they can give the power to the people, actually, instead of it being in the hands of the government, which we already know is corrupt because of the fact that look at what they've done with the power, bro. Look at what this system has created with the power. It's created addiction, it's created separation, it's created cancers, it's created wars, it's created hate, it's created everything. People, no culture in the world wants this, except for the people who are making the most out of the opportunities and the corruption. They like, I don't want to start over, bro. I'm better off than everybody else. I don't want to start over. I'm better off than everybody else. You feel me? So if I get to the world where you're trying to put me in, then I would have to actually do something that's actually beneficial to people. Whoa. That is fucking disgusting.
that That came out of the AIDS crisis, actually. It wasn't some malevolent thing back then. And in the 1980s, we had all these people with HIV and they're expiring, and there's this clamor, like, what are we going to do for all these patients? And the FDA was overwhelmed and said, look, we'd like to do these trials to get you helpful medicines, but we don't have the budget to do it. And so the industry stepped in. But ever since then, they've been dependent on the industry for their funding. And it is very difficult for a regulatory body to regulate an industry when it depends on the industry for money. In the 1990s, they approved opiates for chronic pain, again, based on no studies longer than 12 weeks. And here's the stick part: get those pain scores down. The pharmaceutical industry influenced the Joint Commission, which is responsible for evaluating and accrediting hospitals. This was on the wall of every emergency department room I worked in. 0 to 10, what's your pain level at? Nurses were compelled to recheck on the patients. What's your pain level? We got to get that down. The Joint Commission published a guide in 2001 about pain management, and that was funded by Purdue Pharma and told us that the risks of opiate use have been exaggerated. Tactic 4, they blur the lines between patient advocacy and academic groups and marketing. Take a look at this group, Partners Against Pain. Pain, it's not something you need to, you have to manage alone. You have a partner. And look at, they're holding hands. Like, who would argue against that? They're fighting pain and loneliness. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, this was truly a creation of Purdue Pharma, what they call unbranded outreach. That was 1993. And take a close look at these academic societies. This is the American Academy of Pain Management. That's the former president, Dr. Lynn Webster. We have an epidemic on our hands, and the status quo is failing us. Curious thing about that academy, they've got a corporate council. And look who's on it. Purdue Pharma, Endo, Pfizer, all makers of opiates. So is Pharma the one to blame? Well, they certainly are part of it. I mean, this was their marketing strategy. But I want to caution you that it's too easy to just blame the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry sells all over the world. This crisis didn't happen in Japan.
Because America is not ignorant, bro. They're using this stuff as weapons. They're using this stuff as weapons. And these companies that we see are too big to fail. They get legal. They don't take legal liability simply because of the fact that they're actually government corporations. They're government handpicked favorites that they choose to go over the world and fuck shit up. That's it.
It didn't happen in Germany. It happened here. So what is it? Why did it happen here as opposed to these other countries that they have patients who have chronic pain, pharmaceuticals they sell them there too? Well, this is from my performance review in the year 2012. Those are my arms. I'm very proud. Chris, we are also proud of you for the work you are doing with chronic pain, but it's such a fine line between increasing risk of opiate addiction and HCAP scores. You know what HCAP scores are? Those are your patient satisfaction surveys. They do not exist for your health. They exist for you as a customer to get you coming back. Medicine in America, unlike other countries, is first and foremost a business enterprise. And every business enterprise has as its primary obligation is to make money for the owners and investors, and in the process enrich the participants. Even not-for-profits have investors, they're bondholders. In fact, fiduciary responsibility, which all these executives undertake, compels them to do this. For this reason, American medicine is not incentivized for your long-term health. It is incentivized to sell you healthcare services. But this leads to an unavoidable conflict in healthcare. Healthy patients don't need to buy healthcare. Now, why would this pose a risk for opioid crisis? Because a system driven to sell services thrives when patients are in a state of chronic disease, and that is precisely the model that opiates employ. It checked off a lot of boxes for us. It allowed us to expand the customer base. Pain is a vital sign. Pain is an epidemic. Pills solve the problem. Visits are quick. You can see tons of patients and turn them over. Pills are by prescription only. We corner the market. Tylenol doesn't solve this. Opioids do. And treatment is lifelong and indefinite. Patients become dependent on these opioids and keep coming back. So what do we do about this? Two paths forward, a short term and a long term. In the short term, we need to prevent creating new opiate-dependent patients. In the long term, reform a system that created this. Studies do not support the use of these medicines for management of chronic pain. If you have back, joint, neck pain, do not start these medicines. They don't work in the long term. Medical-assisted therapy helps patients who have developed opiate use disorder, but is a very imperfect solution. It cuts your rate of overdose in about half, but your risk of death is still 3 to 5 times higher if you're on medical assisted therapy than if you never developed the problem at all. Bottom line is this: the American system is a failure. In addition to overcharging you, we are not getting you good medicine, good therapy that is well driven by science. And it's not because doctors want to cause harm. Our incentives are broken. We need a different type of system, one that rewards outcomes or at least stops rewarding just the sales of services. This would be more in line with the Hippocratic Oath and what other countries do. So what can we do going forward? Well, we can at least acknowledge that opioids don't work for chronic pain. As far as I'm aware, the American Medical Association, American Heart Association, none of them have acknowledged this. We need to interrupt the financial relationship between doctors and the industry. We need to make research more scientific and make the FDA independent. And we need to stop volume-based revenue for doctors and clinics. Oh, and let's stop this whole talk about morality. And this is a challenge I would even say to the traditional recovery industry. We have created addiction in mice, in chimpanzees, insects, pigeons. We don't talk to them about their character defects. So this is my final slide. I conclude here. This is a painting by Edward Munch. It's called Despair. It is derived from the Latin verb spero, which means to hope. So despair literally means without hope. I got involved in this problem because I was initially very frustrated with trying to manage these patients in the emergency department. But the more you learn about these patients and what they're going through and what their families are going through, it is a world of suck. You do not want to wish that on anyone. And so I argue for reducing opioids because not because I want them to suffer pain, but because I don't want them to enter this life of misery. And I want a healthier system for my colleagues, many who are great people, that want to practice effective, compassionate medicine. Because we all deserve better. Thanks very much.
All right. So I'm about to end this video. My conclusion on all this shit. He put a slide up right here. Let me see where it's at. Where he had the solutions or whatever. Where the solutions at, my knee? Because I'm all about the solutions. You feel me? Okay, there right there. It says expand the customer base. Oh wait, never mind. This is what they're doing right now. Okay, what can we do? We can acknowledge, we can force. Okay, this is their solution to this shit. This is I'm gonna have my own solutions, but this is their solutions. Acknowledgement by major medical organizations that opioids are not effective for chronic pain. Okay, why the fuck do we need them to acknowledge it? We need to educate the public on what this shit actually is doing to people, the same way at the same level that we're educating people who are PhDs and shit like that. Because in the end of the day, it's no reason for there to be such a gap in the intelligence to where you could actually prescribe. You could be prescribing people shit that's going to make them addictive. You're telling them the risk of this shit based off of some whack ass studies that you know are whack. And if you don't know they're whack, then you shouldn't even be a doctor. Because I can look at some fucking research, medical research, or any average person should be able to look at medical research and then see if it's sufficient or not evidence in the research for you to make a conclusion on it. But with that being said, we need more people that can do that. It shouldn't just be doctors. It shouldn't just be certain people certified to do it. Or if there are, then most people should be certified. But damn sure, the acknowledgement by major medical organizations that opioids are not effective for chronic pain. Guess what, bro? That shit is already known, bro. They know that. The fact that they're not telling the public is the issue. So let's just fucking educate the public. You get what I'm saying? The acknowledgement part don't fucking matter. Number 2, their solution was interrupt the financial relationships between doctors and drug and device industry. If you want to do that, that means we're going to either have to give over our whole healthcare system to the people, meaning you completely relinquish all power that the government has over somebody's body. You making an amendment that's saying everybody has the right to do with their body what the fuck they want. And we can't force you to do shit. We can't force you to do nothing with your body, right? You do that, you make that an amendment, and in that point, that naturally people are going to do what's best for them, bro, because pain in most cases are as a result of people trying stupid shit, people doing stupid stuff. That's what I mean. It's as a result of people doing unconscious stuff, you know. And as a result of us like relinquishing this power, people will realize that they have the power over their health, they have the power over their body, and they won't, you know, they won't fucking uh rely on a doctor for all that stuff. Basically, they'll actually be educated. That the education system would probably naturally teach people about all the stuff, and it would people would actually naturally want to know it because there aren't going to be as many bailouts, and if there are, they're probably going to be very expensive if we continue to have the capitalistic system along with giving people that amendment. But also the other solution, the other side of that, in order to interrupt the financial relationship between doctors and drugs and device industry, in order to do that, another solution that they going out there is that basically you give the government complete power over all the health shit in America. And I'm completely opposed to that as much as I am opposed to the shit that's currently happening. Both of them are fucking trash ideas. Like I said, make the amendment, people control their own health. Bow, we got the solution. Number 3, make research more scientific. FDA must be independent. Fuck the FDA. Destroy the FDA. Is not a trustworthy organization or administration. We can create a whole new organization or administration to make that's actually trustworthy. Or we should have every state should have their own one, and they should come together and be able to vote on some shit like that. Like that's how it should be. Like medical professionals should be in like politician, like the power of politicians if we do it like that. But at that point, that could replace the FDA system because that would be more efficient. I'm sure it would be. That would be way more efficient. I'm sure it would be. So companies must not companies not allowed to fund their own trials and pay for their own doctors. So companies should not be allowed to fund their own trials and pay for their own doctors. That's insane that they had to fucking make a push for that in the medical industry. But just because of the capitalistic system, as a result of that, we will already see that, you know, the outcome is what we have today. And the fact that these doctors are coming together and try to go against it, that's actually good energy on our side. But at the same time, you have to realize that that's not going to compete because we're in a capitalistic system and money can overpower these people, and the money will outlive these people who are going against it, if you really think about it. So if we don't educate the public on what all these things are, which is what I'm here to do. So if you're not interested, then shit, just stay asleep, bro. Just let the people who you saying you care about keep being addicted to opioids without them knowing the effects of them. Let the people around you keep being depressed without them knowing the cause of their depression, and without them knowing that, you know, the system is based off of capitalism and is not based off of their health. So everything that they're being prescribed really is contributing to the pathology of them being depressed. So yeah, that's just like insane right there. Like trying to, like, we have to separate capitalism from reality. That's what we have to do. And if we're gonna make the economy fake and we're gonna have the economy based off of nothingness besides numbers and stacks and the amount of memory that you can store or some shit like that, then let's make it imaginary completely. Detach it from reality where we have to actually have to care about our health and stuff like that. And see, it takes people like me to decipher the details and shit like that to come with solutions and then present it to people, because a lot of people, like I said, they lazy. Like and it's good because human beings, the more lazy you are, the better, the healthier you might be actually. You know, as long as you're actually working out, you eating the right shit, you getting sunlight, you lazy in the right conditions, and you working in the right conditions, you good. But it don't take a mass amount of work to actually be peaceful and have a productive society. It doesn't, especially if you don't waste time and efforts on stupid shit. You get what I'm saying? So the amount of people out here who are conscious and they have the wherewithal to see the bullshit, a lot of them don't say nothing because you know, they're under this mind state that, oh my God, I can't feed into this negative energy, or they're so detached from the rest of the world because the rest of the world is so stupid and bullshit. And they got this mind state that, oh my God, like, you know, um, people, they relying on people like me in certain like spiritualities, in which people like me, like Malcolm X type spirits and shit like that, we're able to be at peace, you know, and still be warriors, and then still collect the information and the details, and still be able to present it to people to where they actually can get actual solutions without them being just stuck on the surface of stuff all the time. Because they'll see, a lot of people see this opioid crisis as either an illusion or a government conspiracy, but they fucking grandma taking the fucking opioids. Your auntie taking the opioids. And I'm not saying you got to go to your grandma, your auntie, and say, give me the opioids or some shit like that. I'm not saying that. But at the end of the day, I'm saying you can be a part of, you know, educating people. You can be a part of educating people on the details of what's happening right now, because being aware is being underrated. Like, I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, awareness was a big thing on the internet, like being aware and conscious. But they created a whole psyops to where people feel stupid just for even like saying they're aware. Like, and I'm not saying being aware is a deep thing, but it is an important thing. You gotta at least start there. So, yeah. With that being said, that's what I'm here to do, bro. Soljai, CGT Soljai podcast, opioid episode. Thank y'all for sticking through to the end. We got the solutions covered. Tell me what y'all think. What y'all think solutions would be. Tell me y'all thoughts on the whole subjects of opioids overall. Maybe you're a person who is in favor. You favor taking opioids and shit like that, and you say, man, this shit ain't really that deep. Hey, that's your opinion, and I would love to hear it. Peace.